quick introductions. Again, Ryan Kachova, I'm the head of customer strategy. My background is a 50-50 split between consulting and operating roles, all things focused on engineering, R&D, and all things surrounding engineering and R&D, particularly around translating that to the business, driving R&D efficiencies and things of that nature. I'd like to introduce my esteemed colleague here. Nick, if you want to give a quick overview of your background.
Sure. Hi, Nick Arcolano. Glad to see everyone here. I'm the head of research here at Jellyfish. I've been here, almost 5 years. Wow. And so our research department, we're the innovation, data science, and analytics function here at Jellyfish. And so, we're the folks that compile and look at a lot of this data from the, analytics side about what we're seeing in our platform. So let's get into it. So we're here to talk about our state of engineering management report. So this is something we've been compiling. This is our fourth one, I think. And so, hopefully a lot of you have looked at the report itself. If not, you should definitely check it out. But if we go to the next slide. So, there's two main parts to this. So we compile a large set of the data that we see here in our Jellyfish platform. So, this is our largest one yet. We've compiled a subset of our data that corresponds to about 13,000 engineering teams and, the work that they do in, Jira and Git, the performance metrics and also the allocations stuff, seeing from a strategic perspective, how do their respective businesses think about their time? That corresponds to about 80,000 engineers total, whose work we're analyzing here. And then there's another part, which is the surveys that we do. So, several hundred engineering leaders who we talk to get the context to really understand, what's going on in their teams and their businesses that helps, explain what we're seeing here in the data. And this year, this is wild, Ryan. This year, we saw it's kind of a year unlike any other, which is probably not surprising to folks who've been out there, like us, who are out there seeing it. If you go to the next slide, it's 2022. Everything that we see in the data, what we were hearing from folks, it was a year of transition, right? It started off one way, ended up another way. 2021 and 2023 are two very different places, and we see in the data that 2022 was the year where that transition happened. So, we saw in the survey results, folks talking about, 44% talked about hiring freezes. Almost everyone had some reprioritization of work. I'd love to know, Ryan, what you were seeing in the field that mirrors like what we see in the data and what we've certainly been feeling, from the folks in this industry.
Yeah, Nick, I think before I even get into that, I think we were chatting a bit, about this report and some of the findings, and it was interesting to hear that, year over year we started to see little changes, right? Some maturation, maybe a slight shift here or there. The seismic shift that we started to see in 2022, and just like the demonstrative change in the data itself and what the data was starting to tell us, I think was surprising. And probably from a data science perspective, I'm like,
yeah, it just looks different.
Year, like the velocity of change is something that seemed like 3 years combined into one.
Yeah, it was reassuring to see how different things looked, given how different things felt.
Yeah, and I think that amplified when we had the chance to talk with customers too, and survey respondents, and actually dig into that to validate, like, hey, what is some of the background we're seeing here? And we're seeing a lot of different challenges, right? I think one of the biggest themes that popped out was the idea that a lot of things shifted quickly, right? And I think what a lot of teams started to struggle with was trying to hold off the inertia that was coming through with historical processes and historical focus. So as you shift from priority A to priority B, or you change things suddenly, it's really hard to get engineers to want to stop working on that thing that they were super passionate about, dug into, or even just find clean breaks to pick it up later at a future point. A second thing that we thought came out a lot was actually this idea of thrashing. Whiplash might be a better word for it. And it's really just the idea of like the pace of the shift, right? And we saw that in the data, but it started to come out in conversations too, where people saw this sudden change going from, hey, we're going to continue to grow at all costs, the follow-up of essentially 12-year bull market. And now people are saying, whoa, we have to change what we're doing. We have to really quickly pivot and work on efficiencies and things of that nature. And I think that kind of goes along with the inertia element, but kind of maybe explains it, is like how fast it all had to change, or at least the fast it did change. The other thing that really stood out, and maybe we can riff on this for a minute, but like justifying some of the key priorities and be able to like effectively manage their teams in a way that balances like this efficiency, but without having to change like their management styles. Because there's large impact on things like retention and engineer satisfaction that drive efficiency and drive effectiveness is maybe a better word for it. So we started to see like a shift in how to do that and different techniques being explored. And people are starting to learn that like, having a conversation at like a higher level around like, hey, we should probably put about 20% of our effort on this feature, as opposed to worrying specifically about where everybody's spending their time, seemed to be the most effective approach people started to land on. I don't know if anything else stands out from you from a data science perspective there, from your experience just working day in, day out with engineering.
Yeah, I mean the thrashing stuff and the changes and the transient nature, the idea that like there's sort of a turbulent period, you see this all the time, and sort of the way that growth and change works is there's a period of turbulence and then a new normal. And we've all felt it where, you identify that things have to change well before you're able to figure out what the change ought to be, right? And sometimes there's a few false starts. And so I think a lot of what we're seeing in the data is evidence of people trying those changes, trying to digest, figure out what the changes need to be.